Kurds are not the only ones fighting the Islamic State. The United Nations Security Council has adopted a resolution calling on the international community to combat the IS. For more on this, Michael Shank, an international relations analyst, joins us. He's with the Friends Committee on National Legislation, an organization that promotes peaceful ends to conflicts. First of all, let me get your thoughts on this possibility of the U.S. launching airstrikes in Syria. It was something that was talked about a year ago, but it was a different group of people that President Obama was talking about going after. Now it's the IS.
Yeah, Congress has yet to vote on this. There's a debate in the Senate and the House as to whether or not Congress post-recess should come back and make a vote so the White House isn't going it alone. Here's the problem. General Dempsey, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, has said there's no military solution. Even Barack Obama has said there's no military solution. And yet we're choosing the military solution. And despite our track record, we armed and trained the Mujahideen in Pakistan. They used it against us. We armed and trained the warlords in Afghanistan. They used it against us. We armed and trained the rebels in Syria. They're using it against us. We armed and trained the rebels in Libya. They're using it against us. We armed and trained the sons of Iraq, and now they're using it against us. So we have this really bad track record of flooding countries, non-state actors, with our weapons, then they end up using it against us.
Well, you used to work up on the Hill. What do you think lawmakers are thinking at this stage? I mean, they have to be scratching their heads that a year ago, the President of the United States was saying, well, look, we've got to strike Assad. And now, a year later, hey, maybe we got to go after these guys who are the opponents of Assad. Yeah. What does that say about the complexities of what's going on in terms of the civil war in Syria and Middle East foreign policy altogether?
When we invaded Iraq, many members of Congress, and I watched this, didn't know the difference between a Sunni and Shia. So here we're invading Iraq in the early 2000s. We don't know the difference between Sunnis and Shias, let alone Kurds. And the dynamics, whether it's religious or sectarian or even a fight over resources, as your correspondent Sean has reported on oil and gas and even water in the north. So we don't get those complexities. We invade a country and then we hope that they sort it out with little support, political or economic. What we don't do well either is diplomacy. We haven't ensured that everyone's at the table. So we gave Baghdad to the Shias. We didn't really include the Sunnis. Understandably, now they're upset. They're not politically included. They're not economically included. And so they're rising up and saying, we want a piece of the pie too. Okay,
but you go back as far as the Mujahideen, the warlords in Afghanistan. I mean, you've got chapter and verse. Are the lawmakers, is the White House, are they getting the message? I mean, are they taking a step back, or do you think they're just kind of lunging forward again?
We don't seem to have much of a political memory in America. It's maybe 3 months or 6 months, but we don't remember what happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, let alone 60 years ago. The Iranians know full well when we dethroned their democratically elected Mossadegh leader for oil interests primarily. So we don't do a whole lot of pre-planning. We name the bad guy, we go after them, and let the local people clean up afterwards. And so we're leaving this kind of devastating wake throughout the Middle East with no kind of regional solution in place.
Let me ask you a little bit about Syria, because I was looking at Al Monitor, this online news agency. They started reporting that starting on August 13, in less than a week, IS surprised rebels seizing control of 13 villages, now in a town just north of Aleppo. And they say basically the rebels now, instead of fighting Assad, they are fighting Assad's forces, but they're also fighting the IS, that there's a good chance that they could get wedged in between the IS on one side and the Assad forces on the other. What does this say about this civil war, and where does it go?
Well, there's even talk, as you've reported, about Assad and the U.S. potentially partnering together on some kind of agenda, which is interesting because for years we ostracized Assad and actually recalled our ambassador from Damascus. I was there when we recalled our ambassador. So at one point we exclude, and then another point we're like, oh no, we need to include. I think at this point, unless we sit down with every interested actor, non-state and state, and say, all right, how do we figure this out? How do we do resource sharing? How do we ensure economic and political inclusion? I don't think dividing up these countries, Iraq as an example, many people said Kurdish north, Sunni central, and Shia south, that's very problematic because who's going to get the resources? And so until everyone's at the table, we're not going to see a true reconciliation plan.
All right, Michael, thanks so much for coming in. It's complicated, that's for sure.